welcome to Earth.
Welcome to Earth.
Also, welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast.
IndeOLDence Day. This episode, we're featuring Independence Day and Old for our high concept movies.
Yes, we are. And they're both pretty high concept movies. Very simple. Aliens invade on Independence Day and the beach that makes you old.
It's easy.
So I think we did good there.
We're already done. That's it. That's the episode. Enjoy your day.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get into the main movies, which, just so everyone knows, there will be spoilers later on for Independence Day and Old. But before that, we're going to talk about some movies we've seen recently. No spoilers. So Ryan, have you seen anything good recently?
Oh gosh, I've seen a lot recently. Most notably, I rewatched Doctor Strangelove, and I rewatched Doctor Strangelove and The Day After Tomorrow, kind of on this like apocalypse kick of watching some of the Roland Emmerich stuff.
Different ends of the spectrum of quality, though.
Well, I knew I was going to be watching some other Roland Emmerich, so I was like, I should watch maybe like my favorite Doomsday movie first, right? And yeah, so we're recording this, I guess, just like, what has it been, 2 weeks since the election or something?
Yeah,
something like that. So I've been on like a Doomsday cinema kick.
Just in case, you never know what's gonna happen. I also watched a Roland Emmerich movie. I was gonna save it for last because it's a segue, but now it's a segue in the front. So I'll just say I watched Stargate. It was actually pretty good. It was kind of like a cheesy 90s sci-fi thing, and yeah, it was better than I expected. So I enjoyed it. Had some cool effects, a little 2001 inspired, like star in the Stargate, that sequence. So it was pretty cool, but also very cheesy. Definitely certain elements, but so once they go through the Stargate pretty early on, and once they go through the Stargate, it's pretty cool what's on the other side, and then the ending it gets crazy. No spoilers, but yeah, it's a fun movie, and it's sort of Roland Emmerich's MO of taking a conspiracy theory and then like showing it as if it was real, I guess. Like if the moon was empty, or all the other. Yeah,
Moonfall.
Yeah.
Oh God.
So yeah, I watched that. I also watched The Sunset Limited, which is a very different movie. No good segue to that one. It's just a two-hander with Samuel L. Jackson and Tommy Lee Jones debating religion for an hour and a half, written by Cormac McCarthy, and that was really good. It's on it's like an HBO original, so it's on Max. So I would recommend that but it's kind of a downer. Definitely makes you think. I'm sure people would interpret it differently depending on their own opinions. But I would recommend it. It was really good. Great performances.
Nice. I watched a Max original actually also. I watched Caddo Lake, which is a Max original movie about like some mysterious stuff going on at this lake in what I assume is like Louisiana or something, maybe. Definitely like swampy area. And it's listed as like a horror mystery thriller. I think I'd probably recommend watching it and like going into it not knowing anything, but I also wouldn't actually call it a horror movie. I think you'd be expecting something totally different if you thought it was a horror movie. Maybe go in like expecting like a slow burn thriller, and you might enjoy it.
Cool. Yeah, I saw that one on there, and I just haven't watched it. I know it's produced by M. Night Shyamalan. I don't really know the directors.
I think it's one of their first things. It might be their first.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but cool. So it was all right.
Yeah, it was all right. I think expectations are important, and go in with like as few as possible.
Yeah. Well, there's 3 other movies I watched recently, all recent releases, and one of them I think you also watched, which is Heretic.
Yes.
Which is also a lot of religious debate in that movie. Apparently the last 2 weeks there's a little religious debate theme in what I was watching. But yeah, sort of Hugh Grant it really takes religion to task, I guess. It takes Mormonism to task. It follows two Mormon missionary girls that are like, 18 to 20 range, and they're going around and they go to trying to convert people to their religion, and they get to the wrong house, and Hugh Grant just yaps their ear off.
He does do a lot of yapping in that. Yep.
But I really liked Heretic. I thought it was really fun.
Yeah.
And pretty messed up also.
Yeah. And cool. I mean, like, it felt like Hugh Grant had a lot of like monologuing in the movie, and all of those felt like appropriately awkward and tense and uncomfortable in ways. I think you really felt the emotion during that whole movie, for me at least, with particularly in like the first bit. But I think there's a lot of emotion in that movie that you feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think I really liked the two. I liked all the performances. Also, Topher Grace is in it, and I didn't even realize it was him until like after I looked on Letterboxd or IMDb or something, and I was like, "What the hell? That was Topher Grace?" I had no idea. But yeah, the other like performances are just really, really great. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't familiar with either of the actresses beforehand, but they were both very, very good actors.
Yeah,
thought they did good, and I thought the characters were interesting, and I appreciated Sophie Thatcher's character, Sister Barnes, had the sort of, you could see she wasn't as like devout, I guess, or like fully, she had questions basically. So I thought she was probably the most interesting character, I guess. But also Hugh Grant is pretty interesting. So,
yeah. But I did think that both of, well, I guess all the actors really, but putting Hugh Grant to the side, I think it was just like a very compelling, everyone's acting was very compelling in the movie, which is really important for a movie that's like the movie's mostly about three people, right? Like, and so the performances are like a huge part of that.
Yeah, and I feel like they did a very good job of making everything convincing, because like, I don't think it's a spoiler to say that, well, we're saying like it's just the three of them in a house for the whole movie basically. And yeah, you know, they go from different rooms to rooms sort of, but like they do a very good job of showing them sort of realizing that they can't necessarily get out, and their decision making generally makes sense. They're not just doing stupid things. So yes, a lot of decision making makes sense, and it feels legitimate that they're trapped. It doesn't feel like it's contrived just for the movie.
Right, which helps a lot with like the tension and like anxiety that I felt during the movie, partly because of the performances, but also partly because like there was never a moment really where I was like, no, like just leave, because they are like, there's a lot of, well, yeah, they try to do everything right, it seems.
Yes, exactly. They're very like smart characters, I think. Yeah. So I really liked Heretic, and it was also, I got to see it in the theater, so that was fun. I haven't been able to get to the theater a lot recently, but that I was happy to see that one in the theater. But I saw something else on Netflix. It's called Emilia Perez. Do you know what this movie is?
No, I think I've seen it come up a few times somewhere, but
I don't think I know what it is either. I don't think it knows what it is. This movie is all over the place. It's a musical about a Mexican drug cartel drug lord, like kingpin, who is, well, at the beginning of the movie, he's a man, and then he wants to fake his death and become a woman. So he like hires a lawyer played by Zoe Saldana to, you know, get the things together for the surgery. And then also it's about the tragedies of the drug cartels in Mexico and all this personal melodrama. And also there are musical numbers, and they're not very good. And it was just all over the place. There are good elements in the movie, but none of it really comes together to me, especially the tone. Like some of the musical sequences are kind of laughable, especially the ones in English. I don't really speak Spanish fluently, so I don't know like how campy or silly those were. Mm-hmm. But there are two sequences in English, and one of them is just a conversation that I guess would have worked as dialogue. It's not that bad, but there's one in a surgery Zoe Saldana goes to Thailand to like research, like, oh, what are they going to do? How much is it going to cost? All this stuff. And it's like a big spectacle, people, choreography of people. I don't even know how to describe it. At one point, a guy sings. Just what they're saying is just hilarious and ridiculous, and it's one of the most insane scenes I've seen in a while.
This sounds crazy.
It's a crazy movie. Yeah. And yeah, I forget, oh man, what was the actress's name? The lead actress is Carla, or she's sort of the lead, Carla Sofia Gascon, and she plays the drug kingpin at the beginning and the end of the movie. Like, so she plays sort of male and female, and they do a very good, she is a transgender woman, I think. So at the end, she's sort of just looks like herself. But in the beginning, they do a very good job with the makeup, and like they have face tattoos and a beard, and it's a very convincing performance that she gives as, you know, this male, scary cartel guy.
Wow.
Yeah. I will say I don't think I can recommend the movie, but it's a lot of big swings, but I think there's a lot of misses and foul balls.
Interesting. Yeah, it sounds kind of crazy.
Yeah. I kind of don't know how to describe it, especially without getting into spoilers of the reasons certain things work and don't work, but there is an element out, like the character before the surgery and then the character after, it feels like two completely different characters. It doesn't feel like one human being who is changing. That's how it came off to me.
Interesting.
It felt like a completely new character. And so that was just something that didn't work for me without getting into details.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, that apparently is like getting buzz as being like nominated for Best Picture. It was I think the four main actresses won the Best Actor award at the Cannes Film Festival. Wow. So it's kind of getting like a good amount of hype, and it's directed by Jacques Audiard, who's done a bunch of like really good dramas. He's like a French director. He did A Prophet. He did Rust and Bone. He also did The Sisters Brothers in I think his only English language movie. But so it's like a, you know, Selena Gomez, Zoe Saldana, like pretty big names in this movie. So it's getting a lot of hype, but I don't think it quite lives up to it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds like quite a ride.
It's on Netflix if you want to check it out. I mean, it is also way longer than your 90-minute reference. It's like 2 hours 20 or something like that.
Yeah.
2 hours 10.
I'm already going to see Red One in IMAX, and I think that kind of takes my... Yep.
Red One?
Yeah, we're my partner and I are going to go see that today, to start our Christmas season stuff.
Not to cut you off, sorry, but do you think that movie is being released too early?
I think yes, first of all, but also I think this movie is going to be hilarious. I've been excited for this since I saw the first trailer, and like in a like I'm going to laugh the entire time way. Like this movie's going to be so bonkers and fun, and I'm not sure if it's actually going to be self-aware of that or not yet. like I know The Rock Dwayne Johnson has been getting some flack for comparing it to Oppenheimer for like the IMAX release. I guess like when he saw Oppenheimer in IMAX, he said, "This is going to be a game changer for Red One." Right? Or something along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. The comparisons are right there.
And yeah.
I just think it's so strange to release this on like November 15th.
Yeah.
Like, why not wait till like early December? I feel like that's when it would, like, it's going to be out of theaters by the time Christmas rolls around, you know? Like, it doesn't feel like Christmas to me yet. It feels early.
Don't want to compete with Nosferatu, you know?
Nosferatu is going to be sick.
That's going to be awesome. That's going to be a great movie.
Yeah.
If it was between that or Red One, it doesn't matter what season it is. Even if it's on Christmas Day, I'm not seeing Red One.
No way. Yeah, I'm not saying it should have released on Christmas, but I think like a few weeks before Christmas instead of a month and a half before.
Yeah. Yeah, it is surprising to me that it came out this early.
Yeah.
But Yeah, I'm not expecting much. I'm hoping to have a laughing and a good time. But
Was there anything else you watched recently that you wanted to mention?
Good point. There's, I guess, a couple more. So one more thing, real quick, is I saw the Blair Witch Project. I ordered. I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast yet, but a little while back, I ordered the Second Sight special edition for the Blair Witch Project. So Second Sight went back to the original masters for the high 8 and 16 millimeter footage, which has never actually been used to recreate the footage, the movie yet, which is weird. But when it came out originally in 1999, they took the high 8 and 16 millimeter footage and transferred it to 35 millimeter for theaters, of course. But then when it went out to like home theater and everything, they took the 35 millimeter transfer and transferred it to digital. So there was like a lot of loss, and it added like a bunch of negative effects that the directors and producers have kind of always been a little salty about, right? And so Second Sight finally is releasing something that this is like a real reconstruction of the original footage, which I was really excited for. So The Blair Witch is up there on some of my favorite movies. So I ordered this a while back. I had to order a region-free Blu-ray player for this because it is region B, unfortunately. But it was so worth it. The footage looks so good. It looks so like authentic and more real. The colors look better. The shadows look better. The movement looks better. And it comes with the 35 millimeter footage also, so you can kind of compare in that way. And there are so many points where it just looks so much better. So if anyone is a huge Blair Witch fan, if you have a region B Blu-ray player or a region free one, I would definitely recommend getting the special edition while it's still out. I'm sure the reconstruction, I'm sure the reconstruction will be available at some point after the special edition is done, but I don't know. I didn't want to risk it. I wanted to see it as early as I could. It's pretty fucking great. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's really cool that all the effort that goes into like preserving and just getting movies out there in the best possible quality. Just companies like that or Criterion or, you know, anyone who does that is it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the other thing I'll mention real quick is similar in a similar vein. I watched the first part of the Bloodthirsty trilogy, which is a collection that Arrow put out, which is also a region B disc. So because I have the region free player now, I indulged a little bit. Mm-hmm. But the Bloodthirsty trilogy is 3 movies by Mikio Yamamoto from the 1970s that are like Japanese interpretations of like the Western mythology of a vampire. And so the first one in the trilogy is The Vampire Doll from 1970. And then there's Lake of Dracula, I think came out in 71. And then finally, I forget the other one. But
Evil of Dracula?
Evil of Dracula, that's it, yeah. Evil of Dracula. I think that's like 74. I think there's a smaller jump there.
Yeah.
But yeah. And I'm excited to watch the others, but I've only seen the first so far. And The Vampire Doll was absolutely fantastic. Instant 5 stars for me.
Wow.
Absolutely a great movie. A very like it feels like it should be a classic, and I think it's just not like distributed enough for a lot of people to have seen it, which is unfortunate. But I think you can rent it digitally in the States somewhere. But yeah, I would definitely recommend if you're into like vampires or like J-horror or anything like that. Vampire Doll, amazing.
Yeah, I've never heard of these movies, but I'm looking at them now and they look really cool.
Yeah.
Also, the posters look awesome.
Yes.
Like just on Letterboxd, the poster for like Lake of Dracula is awesome.
Yeah.
So it looks really cool. I'm not familiar with them. Also, the first one's only 71 minutes, so that's a nice little runtime.
I know.
I watched the last thing I wanted to mention was a 58-minute movie. It's on Amazon Prime in the US. It's called Look Back. It's an anime movie based on like one-shot manga by Tatsuki Fujimoto, who's the guy who wrote Chainsaw Man. So I really liked the first season of Chainsaw Man, so I ended up watching this, and it was not quite what I expected. It's really just a like coming of age drama and just like an emotional story that might make you cry type of a thing. I was kind of expecting like some kind of a twist on it. Like, I don't know. They don't really. It's just a pretty straightforward drama. There is elements of like dream sequences and stuff like that are a little bit more out there, but it's a really good movie. I just think knowing that going in is helpful, that there's not some twist that it's, you know, there's no crazy twist to the movie really. There's sort of a big reveal toward the end, but it's really just an emotional like plot point basically. But it's very well animated for the most part. There are a couple little wonky parts, but yeah, I really liked it. It was interesting. It's about like these two girls that really like drawing, and you sort of see their lives as they're growing up and drawing manga together, and then, you know, life happens, and I'm not going to spoil the movie or whatever. It's really short, so but it's a very good movie. Right now it's actually on Letterboxd the 51st greatest movie of all time.
Well,
which is not that good.
Yeah, it just came out, right? I mean,
it just came out, and it just has a lot of 5-star reviews, and like I understand why people would really love it, like especially if it hits them emotionally and they connect with it. I gave it 3.5 stars, but I think that 3.5-4 star range was probably, you know,
where it'll land out.
Yeah, but that happens a lot with new movies. The ratings will even out. At one point, like Spider-Man No Way Home was like in the top 100 or something like that.
Yeah,
like it was, you know.
Yeah,
it happens.
Red One might be in the top one.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. That might be a stretch. It might be in the top 250,000. Maybe.
For a day or two.
Yeah, that'll drop down. Anyway, well, I guess that's that. We kind of have yapped for a little while about stuff we've seen recently.
Yeah,
that was good.
We both had some pretty productive movie weeks, it sounds.
Yeah, aka not unproductive weeks. No,
pretty much.
No. But yeah, so I think it's time to get into our IndeOLDence Day.
IndeOLDence Day.
We're going to start with Independence Day.
Naturally.
And yes, spoiler warning for Independence Day.
Yeah. So if you've made it this far because you just wanted to hear about our recent watches, now's a good time to pause this and go watch the movie. Speaking of the movie, 1996. This is co-written by Roland Emmerich and Dean Devlin. Yeah. Written by, or directed just by Emmerich, but it's 45 minutes long. So this was a long one. This was my pick last time.
I was shocked to see you pick such a long movie.
Yeah, don't expect that too often. But I don't know why. Emmerich had been on my list to watch more of his stuff. I remember liking Independence Day.
This is a long movie, but it goes down pretty smooth.
Yeah,
like it's fun, and it doesn't feel like it drags too much.
Yeah, I agree with that for sure.
So yeah, it's Roland Emmerich. This was like obviously his really big breakthrough.
Yeah,
this was a huge hit. It's kind of insane that the sequel was made 20 years later. Like you'd think they would have made a sequel right after, because this was such a phenomenon, really. And it was also kind of Will Smith's, like, I feel like this was kind of catapulted him into being a real movie star, because obviously he was in The Fresh Prince before, but I think maybe there's something else that I'm forgetting, but I feel like this also catapulted him into being really one of the biggest movie stars of the 90s and 2000s. Yeah,
definitely. And this movie this movie is just it's high concept, right? It's aliens attack on Independence Day. It is kind of a revival of some of the like disaster horror movies that had come out in I think in the 70s. There was some what is it, airplane or airport,
I think,
airport,
yeah.
And similar things in that time.
The Towering Inferno, right? Stuff like that.
Right. And so this is kind of like a revival of some of that stuff, and it really brings it back into prominence. Like from this point on, we see a lot of disaster movies, and the framing around them kind of changes a lot in 2001 when 9/11 happens. But this movie kind of, again, brings back some of those things, and it also kind of brings back alien sci-fi in the 90s, which hadn't been quite as prominent as it was again a couple decades before. So
yeah, this was more of an alien movie than I expected. I didn't expect like to see the aliens and get all the details like in there. I kind of just thought we'd see the ship and maybe like stuff like they'd keep them hidden, but there's a lot of detail into that I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
Also, I looked at Will Smith's filmography. Bad Boys was a year before Independence Day. So that was really like, he did 6 Degrees of Separation in 93. So that was like a, you know, drama, not a huge hit, but then Bad Boys, then Independence Day, and then Men in Black, 95, 96, 97. And then 98, he has like Enemy of the State and Wild Wild West, which was kind of a crash landing. But that's just kind of 3 years with 3 gigantic movies. Independence Day and Men in Black. So, yeah.
And then like the late 90s, the early to mid 2000s, like he takes off with a lot of stuff. Well,
he does Ali, and did he get nominated for Best Actor for that? I feel like he might have.
I don't remember,
but then he does a lot more sort of big budget things, like, I don't know, Hancock and Hitch and stuff like that. Yeah. So he's always done big budget things. I don't know why I said that, but
yeah, no, totally. But so this movie's ratings real quick. So this movie, just like in general, was really well received at the time, and I think kind of lives up with like a cult following today of people that just really enjoy the movie. Unfortunately, the sequel came out, and we'll talk about that maybe a little bit. But for this movie itself, it has 68% on Rotten Tomatoes, 75% audience score, 7 out of 10 IMDb, 3.3 out of 5 on Letterboxd, giving it an average of 6.975 out of 10, which is definitely one of our lower ones, which I think makes sense for a lot of reasons. This is more of like a campy good time movie and less of like we've watched a lot of like just fantastic movies so far.
Yeah. It's a different kind of movie. It's a crowd pleaser.
Right.
It's just, you know, I understand, like, if there's a lot of characters, and if some of those side plots are not working for someone, I could see them kind of being like, all right, I feel the 2.5 hours, you know. But I really enjoyed it, and I think this is probably maybe the best of these disaster movies. Obviously, it sort of is the beginning of the modern version of that, so maybe it's responsible for a lot of bad movies that ended up coming out, but I feel like this is actually a very good version of it, where the characters are interesting and likable, the humor generally works, and the action like sequences and the practical effects are very impressive.
Yeah.
So I think it all works, even though it's not some masterpiece or anything, but I think it is a solid, crowd-pleasing, fun movie.
Yeah. Definitely, it is a blast. You get to see like so many, literally, you get to see like so many buildings and cities like collapse, and like, and the scale of this is like, you know, they're not going light like back in like the 70s and everything. Like the disaster movies then were like mostly like single location, right? A disaster is happening in a place, but this is like the disaster is literally everywhere, and I don't know for sure, but it seems like it must be one of the first that actually puts it on that scale. Part of that because of the timing, right? Like in the 90s, the ability to make all this stuff, right? To make this blockbuster movie with a huge budget and a huge amount of miniatures and special effects was possible, right?
Yeah, definitely. And I do think it is a very fun movie, and I think one thing that's a little weird about it is the tone sometimes, because there are moments where the destruction is like emotional and like kind of sad, but then by the end of the movie it's all heroic, and it's like, yes, humans did it, like we're the best, like America's amazing, humans are amazing, this is awesome. But then it's like, oh yeah, we saw like millions and millions of people die throughout this movie.
Yes.
So that is a thing that is a trend in this genre, I think.
Yeah, and that's definitely worth keeping in mind and maybe we'll run through like quickly the story real quick, but it's definitely worth keeping in mind because like, yeah, you see a lot of people die, like a lot, and there's like a lot of people that you don't see die that definitely die. Like, they make a very clear point that they were not able to evacuate these cities.
Yeah, exactly.
But So before we jump into that, though, it is this movie has the record for the most number of miniatures in a film. And some places that I saw even cited that it had like twice the number of any other film. I don't know how true that part is, but it definitely holds the record for the most miniatures in a film, which is really exciting and fun because, one, I love miniatures, but two, I think they're a great way to do like these cities getting destroyed shots, and of course the White House getting blown up shot that you see kind of iconically plastered on the posters, right?
Yeah, the miniatures are perfect for this, and like with the scale of everything, it's just a giant alien ship blowing something up. So you don't necessarily feel the miniature aspect of it because we don't have like a frame of reference for alien ships. So
Right.
it works. Like, I think the miniatures work perfectly. And if you're just a general audience member, isn't going to even notice them. Like it just feels real and in line with what's happening in the movie.
Yeah. And on a similar vein, just real quick, like we had mentioned actually in our Trap episode last week that Roland Emmerich at this time was using a lot of like people for crowds, right? And it's something that we can touch on again when we talk about the sequel, maybe towards the end. But in this movie, like there is a lot of people. Like I don't even know how many extras he must have had for this movie, but like there's a lot of scenes where you just see a ton of people, and it's very clear that they're not like computer generated or other means of faking that crowd.
Yeah, and it just makes everything feel more real and more worth it. It feels like, just comparing it to the sequel, this just feels like a lot more effort and time and passion was put into it, and the sequel feels a lot more just feels cheaper and lazier, to be honest. And maybe, I don't know, I'm sure people did try their best, but it just didn't work. That's just, when you CGI everything, it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't have any stakes to it. Like using the miniatures and the real extras, really like hundreds of extras probably in some scenes. It just makes everything better.
Yeah.
But yeah, so also this movie has a gigantic cast. Like there's a million people in this, and there are these small side parts. You're like, I know that guy, you know. There's a lot of that in this movie, but there's like Will Smith, Bill Pullman, Jeff Goldblum, Mary McDonnell, James Duvall is a side character just for like no reason really. His character, like, I mean, I guess he fits in the movie, but he's barely there. Robert Loggia, Judd Hirsch, James Reporn, Harvey Fierstein, who's very funny, Vivica A. Fox, Ross Bagley, Margaret Collin, and Harry Connick Jr. too. But it's just a bunch of people, like just great character actors, and like Harvey Fierstein and Vivica A. Fox, like their characters feel so real and unique that it adds that texture and like real life element to the movie, where a lot of these movies I think are missing that, where all the side characters are just whatever, they don't feel unique. But like Harvey Fierstein's character feels like a real person with a real life, and not just a pawn in the movie, you know?
Right. Absolutely. And like comparing it, just not even, you know, I think we're already bashing on the sequel a lot, but comparing it to a different Roland Emmerich movie, The Day After Tomorrow, which I saw recently, as I mentioned, in there you get a lot of characters. Kind of one of the plagues of these Roland Emmerich movies is the lot of characters, but this one, it does it well, where like everyone feels interesting and impactful and unique. But in like The Day After Tomorrow, you get a bunch of characters and you don't learn anything about half of them, and the other half are just uninteresting or you don't care about them at all. And you don't get that in this. They're all like, you either love or you hate them, but you love them all, you know, like you like that they're real characters.
Yeah, and Vivica A. Fox's character is a stripper.
That's right.
For no real reason. She's just, I don't know. But it does add to, I guess there is a reason for it, because makes your character feel like a real person to some degree. Yeah.
Even at one point, Will Smith is out flying with
Harry Connick Jr.
Yes, yeah. And dude, what's his character's name? Jimmy Wilder, Captain Wilder. Dude, he's just a great character for the few minutes that we have him. He's amazing. He's just fun, he's hilarious, and he's like not in it for very long, but they even put like that much effort into making him an interesting person, and you see him earlier on in the film too for a bit too. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, definitely. And I think one aspect of this movie is that I don't know all the details behind this. Maybe I should have done more research, but I believe the studio didn't want Will Smith as his character because they didn't want a black guy to be like one of the main characters. And I feel like maybe more stereotypically, it would have been the main character or whatever. One of the main characters is Will Smith. He's not the main character, I guess, but that character would have been played by a white guy, and then his friend maybe is a black guy, and then the black guy gets killed off, and they move on. Like that is sort of the more stereotypical Hollywood version of that. But I think it works to not do that, obviously. And Will Smith is a movie star, and he's really good in this role. So it worked. But that's the thing at the time, and it's still a thing, where I'm sure there are studios that don't want, maybe too many people of certain races in movies.
Yeah.
But anyway, not to make it a downer on Independence Day. It's a fun movie. We don't need to talk about racism, I guess. But
and I think we're very lucky that we end up with Will Smith in this role, because he I can't imagine someone else playing this role. He's amazing.
Yeah, he's really good. Also, Bill Pullman is really great as the president. He's a very interesting president. He's kind of like young and hip, almost in like a Bill Clinton Obama way, but I feel like he's coded as Republican.
Yeah,
to me, like he's former military, obviously, because he knows how to fly planes, and it kind of worked. I think of just finding a character that is a politician that it can actually appeal to the audience. Like maybe in the 90s that was easier. There were but even today it still works. Like you're not thinking like, oh man, this guy's a scumbag. Like he really seems like just a good person, basically.
even towards the beginning of the movie, like someone's telling him, I forget exactly what the scene is about, but someone's like, they're just mad because you're young or whatever, right? And I thought that was like really funny in today's climate of like, for the past while, like all of our presidents have just been old people.
Yeah, really old.
Like pretty out of touch old people, right? Like
yes.
And it's kind of comical to think that this movie has such an interesting character as the president, and also is like being harassed by the media for being too young. And just a funny analog to today.
Yeah, I wish we had some younger presidents for the past few years. And for the future few years. Yeah. Well, now we're talking about racism and politics. I mean, this is an alien invasion movie. It's high concept.
Yeah, let's start talking about the invasion. Yeah. So the opening scene is very fun to me because it's like the camera shows the moon at first, and it shows the plaque on the moon that says "Peace to all mankind." And you actually hear like an astronaut's voice in like a staticky transmission saying like "Peace to all mankind" as the camera is going away from that, and then it shows the big ship that's approaching or whatever. And what a strange way to forebode the end of the world.
Yeah. And does the ship come in on the top of the frame, almost like Star Wars?
Yeah,
that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah,
but this movie definitely is influenced by Star Wars.
Oh my god! So especially once you get into like the actual like dogfighting of the
and the very end of the movie, there's like a musical sting. Like literally the end when the credits start, there was a musical element that just sounded like it could have come straight out of Star Wars. Yeah.
And this movie kind of like, so right after that scene, this movie really like, it starts right away. We jump right into seeing, I think we start with the president's room maybe, or whoever, but right away we start seeing our characters and people start noticing that something weird is happening. We meet Jeff Goldblum pretty early on, and he is like a satellite technician, but working at like a news anchor studio or something.
Yeah, we see him playing chess with his dad first, I think.
Oh, that's right.
But then he goes to the office and Harvey Firestein's there.
Yeah, and he notices that there's something weird in the like interference in the satellites, and he's trying to figure out what's going on, and eventually he does. But in the meantime, we also get shots of who do we go to next? We go to the president next.
Yeah, we're with the president and Jeff Goldblum for a lot of the opening, and then Will Smith is just introduced maybe 25 or 30 minutes in, which is surprising to me because, like, going into this movie and not having seen it before, just knowing it as a cultural entity, I assumed Will Smith was just the main character, protagonist through the whole thing, but he really is just one of a group of protagonists.
And it's interesting because the way they did this at the beginning is they're starting with the East Coast of the US, right? Goldblum is in New York, I believe, and the president's obviously in DC. And so it like starts right in the beginning of the day, right? Like Goldblum's going to work and then notices this stuff. The president is getting to work and having to deal with all this stuff that's going on, gets told that he's too young or whatever, right? And then all of a sudden we're with Will Smith getting woken up by what he thinks is an earthquake, right? And this is when actually the ships have started, the smaller ships, right? These, they say how big they are. I think they say they're like city sized, maybe like 15 kilometers or something. And they start like actually breaking into the atmosphere and heading towards different cities. And Will Smith wakes up and he says, "Is it an earthquake?" And then his wife is like, not even a 4-pointer, go back to sleep. And they go back to sleep for a little while. And eventually we get back to him. And kind of a funny nod to California.
Yes. But yeah, I didn't even think about that. That makes sense that just time zones exist. But yeah, also, it's not, Vivica A. Fox's character is not his wife yet.
You're right.
They're really just dating. And I didn't really think about it, but I mean, it's the 90s in America. It, you know, in different eras or in different countries, they would not have shown two unmarried people like laying naked in bed in the morning. But obviously that's the real part of life. And, you know, but...
And parenting a kid.
Yeah, exactly. And he, you know, she has a kid from a previous relationship. And, you know, I think just these elements of characters make everything feel more real. And it just makes them feel like real people that really exist and not just fake characters. Yeah.
And even with like the them waking up and think it's an earthquake, so going back to bed, like, yeah. And even with the time zone thing, like it feels, it's so interesting to me to see, again, this is like one of the, if not the first time that we're seeing like the destruction on this scale. And we're actually seeing the effects of that as people are waking up at different times and seeing what's going on at different times. So we actually experience Will Smith's time later on in the movie, which is really like, it's really weird.
Yeah, that's kind of a smart way to start a movie, though, I feel like.
Yeah.
Just have the way that it's going to affect people in different time zones, right?
Yeah, definitely. And also, a fun thing is that it starts on January. It tells you right away that's July 2nd.
I was about to say the same thing. It starts on July 2nd. Because that's really... Yeah. July 2nd is the beginning of the movie. It really is kind of just 3 acts. You have July 2nd, July 3rd, July 4th. And it kind of breaks it up really well. And yeah, really July 2nd is just a bunch of people trying to figure out what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the day is the massive destruction that begins.
Yeah. And this is, so Goldblum that realizes what's going on. He says it's got to be a timer, right? A countdown. And realizes there's these ships over all these cities, and the countdown must be them synchronizing so that they can presumably eradicate these cities, right? And so he's trying to get to DC to tell the president, and he gets there like just in time. Literally, they get on a plane and they're leaving as DC is being obliterated.
Yeah.
The plane is actually, the plane is literally, the back of the plane is in the fire for a brief minute.
Yeah.
Kind of hilarious.
Yeah. And also, like, in LA at the time, there's like, we see Vivica A. Fox at work, and one of her coworkers, who's also a stripper, I guess, is like, oh, people are going up to some building right under the ship. They're, you know, and Vivica A. Fox is like, don't do that. Like, I wouldn't fucking go there. And then she goes there, and we see her die with a bunch of people because they're on the building, and then the ship just blows up the building. And really the effects and just the the visuals of it all are very impressive. Actually, it holds up really well.
Yeah. And this goes back to that whole point about the number of people that die in this movie, because like we're introduced to that character that goes up to the top of the building. We're told a little bit before this that the president decides not to evacuate the cities, thinking that, I forget his reasoning actually, but
I think maybe they just don't know what's happening, so they don't want to necessarily evacuate right away. I don't remember.
Yeah, something like that. And
eventually he ends up fucking nuking Houston.
Yeah.
That was a bad decision. I said he was a good guy earlier. Maybe he's not such a good guy. What a dumb decision.
Well, Houston. You know what? You already had you've had 12 cities blown up at this point. Might
as well make it 13.
But yeah, and so we know that they were not able to evacuate these cities, and we see people celebrating the entrance of these aliens on the rooftops, and then everyone is dead. These cities get completely destroyed in a matter of seconds. And I also wrote a note down that this might have been the most flying cars I've ever seen during these scenes of the exploding cities. Just cars going everywhere.
Yeah, definitely. And somehow Vivica Fox and her son and the dog all survived by just going around a corner.
Yeah,
that was one of that was one of the silliest things in the movie. I felt like it's this giant inferno about to get him, and the dog jumps in right at the last second. It's is really just going around this corner in an underpass really gonna protect you from this giant explosion?
I think they closed the door too. Don't forget that.
That's important. The door?
Yeah, that's probably important.
I don't know if they close a door. I think they just go around a corner, dude. For real. Yeah. Because the dog jumps basically right as the fire is going.
Which is another one of those just in the last moment things, the airplane, the dog, very, very dramatized.
Yeah, dramatized it. Yeah, but that's a huge trope in these types of movies. Is everything happens at the very last second. Jeff Goldblum just barely makes it. It's just trying to add tension to everything, even though it's silly.
Yeah. So we've lost a lot of cities. Goldblum is on an airplane with the president, and his dad, actually. Goldblum's dad makes it on the airplane, and they're on. I presume it's Air Force One or whatever. And Goldblum's dad says something about Roswell. He's like, you guys knew this was going to happen. There was that crash that happened in Roswell. You had decades to prepare, right? And the president's like, man, that didn't happen. I'm sorry to tell you. There's no such thing as Area 51. And then the Secretary of Defense, the former CIA director, who's played by the guy that played Data in Star Trek, voice Data.
I think it's James Rebhorn, right?
Yeah.
Rebhorn?
Yeah. Rebhorn? But yeah. He's actually, sir, that's not entirely true. And then they're like, wait, which part?
Yeah. Yeah, I also did not expect Area 51 to be such a big part of this movie. And I'm glad that it was. That was a fun part of the movie.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They get there, and there's there's the Dr. Oren, who's got this crazy long hair, and he's like, they don't let us out much.
Yeah, and there's a million people working at Area 51. I'm like, how the hell would they keep this secret with all these people working here?
Yeah, and right when they go inside too, there's all this alien debris and stuff. It's very, very obvious. Although they mentioned that they're 26 levels underground or something, which is just kind of hilarious. But
yeah, that's another Roland Emmerich trope of the conspiracies, and they kind of get sillier and stupider over time. He made a movie somewhat recently, I think, that is about how Shakespeare, didn't exist and was written by a bunch of different people and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So he just kind of keeps going with stupider and stupider conspiracies. But
yeah.
It's more fun when he does Ancient Aliens type thing in Stargate, and he does Area 51 in this. I think, and Moonfall maybe. I haven't seen Moonfall.
I don't know if I recommend Moonfall. You're just watching
just a bad version of this, pretty much, right?
Yeah, terrible version of this that somehow feels way longer, even though it might be the same length. If you asked me before I rewatched this movie, I would not have told you this was 2.5 hours. This movie does a really good job at, I think, keeping your attention and not making you feel the length. And watching Moonfall, Do you feel that whole movie?
Yeah, even Independence Day Resurgence is actually like 30 minutes shorter than this, but it feels 30 hours long. It's brutal. But back to Independence Day, there is a very now we're on July 3rd.
Yes,
and there's a very cool dogfight between human fighter pilots and alien ships, and there's lasers, and they're going through a canyon. It kind of seems like Top Gun inspired, perhaps.
Yeah.
And that's a very cool sequence. I don't know if they're in the Grand Canyon or just a canyon.
Yeah, I know. I think I always looked back, like as a kid, like seeing it as a kid, I always remembered it as being the Grand Canyon. But looking back, it's like it could just be a random canyon.
Yeah.
It makes more sense that it's not the Grand Canyon.
I feel like if it was the Grand Canyon, they would have made a bigger deal about it.
Yeah.
And you have some nice like wide shots and really see the whole thing. So I feel like it's just a regular canyon.
Yeah.
But it's
and this is when we get
and I wasn't expecting I don't know. There's just so much lasers and sci-fi in this that I wasn't necessarily expecting. I don't know why. It's an alien invasion movie. It makes sense that it has all these sci-fi elements, but I feel like modern disaster movies like this don't go as far into sci-fi. They try to keep everything more grounded in like reality, quote unquote.
Yeah, I miss this type of sci-fi, and this is when we get Captain Wilder saying some awesome quotes, and then unfortunately not making it. Mm-hmm. He's fighting the good fight with Will Smith, and they end up finally taking down one alien ship, I think, in total.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, they just get one guy, but then Will Smith has the body, and he's doing his whole shtick in the desert or the salt flats, whatever that is.
Yeah, he says something like, "What the hell is that smell?" And that was actually unscripted. It's just because the place actually smelled really bad, apparently.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I could see, just because this isn't as well reviewed as some of the other movies, I could see the Will Smith and Harry Connick, some of the dialogue, I could see people not enjoying it. It's kind of silly, and I don't know. I didn't love it. It wasn't like I was laughing out loud at it, but it didn't super bother me. But I could understand why some people might find it a little grating. Yeah,
I agree with that. I think it's pretty hilarious, but I can definitely see the, like, if you're trying to take them seriously at all, like, it's a little jarring.
Yeah, Harry Connick is making a lot of choices. He's a big performance here. And also, I mean, we're already on July 3rd, but to go back to July 2nd, I wanted to shout out Harvey Fierstein, because I think his character in this is like probably maybe my favorite character in the movie. And he's just such a small side character, and he ends up dying. But I think having his character die, like, it adds that emotional weight to the movie. So it is a fun movie, but it does have real stakes. But he's just such a unique. It just has a unique voice and a unique presence, and he's very funny. So just a shout out to that character, I guess.
Yeah, and we see him. We see the side character you mentioned that was going to bring the sign up to the roof of the building. Yep. We see Captain Wilder. Like, these are three characters that were like at least someone introduced to. Definitely some more than others, but like, and we see them all die horribly.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Kind of a bummer.
Yeah, but somehow the movie, like, I don't know. I think it just keeps on rolling. Yeah. So it just keeps going. You have to go with it, but it doesn't ever feel sad necessarily. It doesn't let you sit with that sadness, but it adds stakes to it.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, I think that you have to go into this like thinking that it's going to be a campy, crowd-pleasing movie and not like a serious or anything like that, because you might be like taken aback by the mass deaths of these characters that you're somewhat introduced to and might enjoy.
Yeah, it's weirdly, like, there is an emotional heft to it, but I don't know. I could see people, it's a little nonchalant with massive amounts of death, especially by the end with such a almost uplifting ending. That's the tone is uplifting and heroic and positive. It's a completely positive tone by the end of the movie, But so I could definitely see that rubbing people the wrong way after seeing, in theory, millions of people die, potentially billions.
Yeah.
Also, this movie very much focuses on America.
Oh yeah.
They get into, at the end, there is some cooperation with other countries, but it's really just at the end.
Yeah, this is really like, this is definitely a movie, like, it, you know, it's called Independence Day. It leads up to July 4th. At the end, they make the whole speech about, like, this is no longer Americans' Independence Day, this is the world's Independence Day, or whatever. And then you start seeing, like, a couple glimpses of other places in the world. But, like, in reality, yeah, this movie is very, like, American-centric.
Yeah.
Which is I think, maybe a product of the time, but also a big disservice. And also kind of necessary because it's trying to use this big scale, and so like doing just America as a big scale is already big enough. And like we said, like this is one of the first ones trying to do kind of a scale that big anyways, so doing something even bigger than that is going to be much harder, right? So
yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. Well, there is the July 3rd sequence. There is a lot of really cool alien stuff at Area 51.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. There's like an alien autopsy of the alien that Will Smith brings back. And he like speaks through the doctor, the alien, like,
yeah,
I don't even know how to describe what that was, but that was a cool scene. And then they shoot it through the glass, which is pretty cool. But it's very effective at making the aliens completely evil, just genocidal monsters that you can just root against 100%. And that's part of this type of movie. You need a villain, and these aliens are the perfect villain. It's almost like a World War II movie. It's like, well, yeah, the Nazis are perfect villains, so it makes an easy good versus evil like story. And this is just the biggest version of that, of just simple black and white. The humans are good and the aliens are bad because the aliens want to wipe out all humans. So it's very simple, and it works for what it is trying to do.
Yeah, there's no ethical dilemma when they're shooting aliens.
Exactly.
It makes total sense. You know?
It's all self-defense, really.
Yeah, they just blew up like dozens of cities. Kill a few, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, even more around the world too.
Yeah. I think in America, like, I don't know how many ships they had in total, but yeah, I mean, there's a few over like several countries, many countries in the world. They mention and they kind of don't bring it up again. But
yeah.
But yeah, I think and the aliens in Area 51 are just so fucking cool though. The design of the aliens, where they have like this external like exosuit or whatever, and then the inside is like this much smaller, kind of frail thing, is really interesting. And also, I love they used a puppet when they're doing the dissection. That the puppet was awesome. Love that.
Yeah.
And just love like the practical effects here. And also, I actually don't really know how they did it, because they very clearly made the aliens look. They designed the aliens in a very specific way that it was clear it could not be a person in a suit.
Yeah.
And I don't actually know what they did to make them look so mobile and good, but it looks great.
It does. It works for sure. The alien design is very cool, and it was a part of the movie that I didn't expect, and I was pleasantly surprised by.
Yeah, and that contrasts so bad with the, like, again, I'm trying not to bring up the sequel too much until the end, but like, oh man,
the sequel is, honestly, we don't even have to talk about the sequel at the end. It's brutal. It's not good. Don't watch terrible. It. It's really not worth your time, honestly.
Yeah, everything that's good about this is replaced with computer generated effects. And somehow they also just like erased the fact that like many cities around the world were destroyed, and somehow 20 years later we're like in a futuristic society with flying cars and bullshit or something. Like, yeah,
I guess there's like alien technology, right?
Yeah,
that's how it's like, oh, whatever, I guess.
Yeah,
it's not good. But to go back to Independence Day, back to a better movie, I think that maybe the last thing for July 3rd is when Bill Pullman gets back and his wife is in the hospital. And this is probably the saddest scene in the movie. She, has internal bleeding and she's dying. And it is very Hollywood, and very, like, the music is really it's like, Roland Emmerich is like, I will make you cry. You will cry at this scene. Like the music is going, the daughter's there. Like it's all so it is kind of a little bit cheesy, but also like it kind of works. Like you feel that sadness in this scene. This is really when they focus on the sadness of the repercussions of the alien invasion.
Yeah. And that was like definitely an emotional scene. Like, I think out of all the people that you are introduced to in the movie, you don't expect her to die.
Yeah. And it is kind of a trope of like the wife ends up dying, and that's sort of motivation for the male main character. So it falls into that Hollywood trope. But realistically, like the scene is, it works.
Yeah.
For what it is, I think. I found it emotional, even if I felt like I knew I was being manipulated by the movie, but I was like, you're still getting me. Like, I don't know.
Yeah. So, and this is also like kind of the turning point, the end of day 3 or July 3rd, when people are like kind of giving up hope in a way. Jeff Goldblum, we didn't talk much about his character yet, but he's this kind of like eco-centric, like environmental centric, like he's big in recycling and kind of like an everyman in a way.
He's like an everyman genius almost. That's how they present him, I think. Like he's smarter than everyone, but he's also a normal guy.
Yeah, and also is big in recycling.
Yeah, like I think that's like yeah, exactly. I feel like that's like coded as like, oh, he's ahead of the times. He like cares about science. He cares about the future type thing.
And this is, I think, it might be just after that scene when he is like drunk and kicking stuff around in the lab, and his dad's like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And he's like, I'm making a mess. Maybe if we screw up this planet enough, they wouldn't want it anyways or something, right? And then he also somehow in this time realizes how to recode the spaceship.
His dad is like, put on a jacket, you're gonna catch a cold.
Oh,
and then Jeff Goldblum is like, oh my god, you're a genius.
Yeah, drunken Jeff Goldblum's like, that's all I needed.
Yeah, there's like beer cans all over him from the night before. He's like, he's like drinking like straight out of a bottle or something, right?
Yeah.
He's like in despair. Yeah. But
then he stays up that entire night, like recoding this virus to attack the shields or whatever.
Yes, so they have to. Yes, exactly. So the details of the plot here, I think, are silly and don't make sense, but it's explained well enough that I just go with it. Like, I'm like, okay, they're using our satellites against us. Sure, that sounds good to me. Like I'm here for it. You know what I mean? And they give you just enough exposition, but not too much to where you're focusing on it. Yeah,
and it's told in like this, like. It's told in this believable and like acceptable way, right? Like everyone in the movie's like, all right, that makes sense.
Yep.
So you're kind of left to believe it as well. I think the virus part when he's like learning about the shields was definitely the part where I was like the most, oh, well, okay, I guess we need a way to end the movie. So, but
there needs to be a plan somehow.
Yeah.
Right? But and then after that they use Morse code to sort of communicate the plan internationally, and
America the hero.
Yes, America has the plan, and we get everyone together to work together. But so it is America the hero, but it is also sort of an international cooperation that is kind of. This is a very optimistic movie in a way, even though it's about mass death and destruction. The messages are all sort of positive and optimistic about humanity and our ability to work together and all that type of stuff.
Yeah. And then essentially they're like preparing the flight crew and everyone's going to get sent into the space to protect Goldblum and Will Smith, who are going to be in the alien ship to go infiltrate the mothership, implant the virus, and put down all the shields around the world so that everyone around the world, because they know about the Morse code message, can attack the smaller ships near them. The big ships, but not the mothership.
The mothership isn't on Earth, I don't think.
Right.
But I think they want to just destroy all the ships that are there?
Yeah, all the city-sized ships.
Yeah.
But Goldblum and Will Smith have to infiltrate the mothership.
Yeah, which is very cool.
Oh yeah, and Will Smith was like training to be an astronaut, right? So when he gets into space, he says something like, "I've been waiting for this my whole life," or something, and that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, very cool. And I have written down here, I don't remember what it is, but Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum get into the ship, and then I said 2001: A Space Odyssey reference.
Oh,
I don't know if it's just a shot, or I wish I could remember why I wrote that down. But I thought there was some kind of a reference to this 2001.
Yeah, there it is. Yep. Interesting. You got it. Yeah,
I got it. It's over there. Right there.
Interesting. I don't know if I caught it, but I'll have to go back and rewatch that scene just to see it. But
yeah, I wish I could remember more clearly why I wrote that down. But
yeah,
I also have written down that Goldblum is great, very funny, insane plan, very cool and fun.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up that. But yeah, Goldblum is awesome. He's just such a unique and weird guy, and his little quirks just work perfectly in this movie, I think.
Yeah. Again, just going back, like all the characters in this movie are just so awesome.
Yeah.
There's even this Russell guy that we haven't talked a lot about, but he's the crop duster, and he got or at least thinks he got abducted by aliens, and it's never really sure if he actually did, but years ago, and is a crop duster, so he volunteers to fly, and he actually he has the last missile.
He saves the day.
He can't launch it, and he radios back and says, "Tell my kids I love them very much," and flies into the Death Star shooting laser thing. And it felt like a very Star Wars reference of like, you got to hit the Death Star in just the right spot, and then it also blows up in just the big Death Star explosion way, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the dogfighting, like we said too, feels very Star Wars-esque.
Yeah.
But yeah, and I wrote a note down, was he ever actually abducted?
I don't know. It's definitely left unclear. I'm sure Roland Emmerich would say yes.
Yeah.
Because it seems like he believes every conspiracy that's ever been posited, even by a single person.
Yeah. So, and they make a point that the aliens had been here before with Roswell, and they crashed, right? So
yeah. So probably yes.
Poor guy. No one ever believed him. He saves the day.
He does save the day. And that's where James Duvall is like his son, right?
Yeah.
So that there's sort of like throughout the whole movie, we haven't even talked about them, but we're kind of like following them throughout the movie. And really just the reason for it is because he is the guy who saves the day at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But their subplot is sort of the least interesting throughout, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
James Duvall is a cool actor. He's in like a bunch of cool 90s like queer new wave movies. Even though he's not gay, but he was in a bunch of Gregoraki movies and stuff. So it's kind of cool seeing him in like random movies every once in a while.
Yeah. He had a very small role in this. He barely does anything, but yeah.
Yeah. He's in a few other like 90s movies, I feel like, that he has just a small role in. I just have to look it up, so I'm just talking to try to fill the time while I try to look. Oh my god, he has so many credits. But he's in like Donnie Darko. He's in Gone in 60 Seconds with Nick Cage.
Yeah, that's right.
So, he's in Go, just like random movies, just seeing him in little side roles is kind of cool.
Yeah. Oh, and we skipped over, but the speech. Yeah, so Bill Pullman does an excellent speech here. It's amazing. It's very like uniting, and it's told to this actual huge crowd of people, and at the end, the applause that he gets was like real applause. Like they were doing just a take of it, and everyone applauded at the end, and they just decided to use that take because they liked that people applauded at the end, but it wasn't like scripted. People just thought he did such a good job saying it.
That's cool. Yeah, this is really a movie of a different time. Just in the president being so capable and charismatic, and he knows what he's doing, and he can just unite people. It's just such an optimistic vision of what the president can be. And, hope maybe we'll get back to that one day.
Yeah. Hopefully. And of course, also, like you had mentioned, in the movie, Bill Pullman was also previously like a Gulf War veteran, I think. And so he was a fighter pilot. So he he wanted to go up and help fight, and he does, and he makes it back. And but him leading into that with the speech was amazing, and then he gets up there and like a very heroic moment here when he does the speech and gets up and flies with them.
Yeah, extremely heroic. And it's sort of interesting, like when it happens, I'm like, why would the president like get in a plane? This is ridiculous. But also, like, throughout history, like presidents have and generals would literally lead their armies in. Like it doesn't happen anymore like that way. But that's like was part of being a leader like throughout history. And so this character really is sort of an ideal of a leader, of just being able to bring people together, and the way he goes in and leads the forces and is part of it is, I guess it's just something that doesn't happen anymore. And really in the 90s it didn't happen either, but it's, it's sort of, maybe that's just something of appealing to just something in the human psyche of respecting someone for actually going in, putting their own life on the line, like, and sticking by.
Yeah. It's similar to like the captain going down with the ship type of thing, right? Like,
yes,
you respect that someone's willing to put their life kind of below the people that they lead, right? And to care more about the people they lead than they care about their own safety or something.
But he's really like kind of the main character in this movie, at least from the way I was viewing it. Like he's kind of the main character, and Bill Pullman is great, and the character is good to root for. Yeah,
he's awesome. It's a toss up between like him. This is gonna sound so dumb, but it's a toss up between him and Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum, who's my favorite in this movie, because they're just all great. The characters are so well written and well acted and well performed, and it, like when people talk about Roland Emmerich's like habit of having too many characters, I think this movie suffers a little bit from that, but it is nothing like in the rest of his movies.
Yeah, the characters are so quirky and unique that I don't think it drags the movie down very much. And I really I think Goldblum and Pullman are probably my favorite. It's funny because Will Smith, like as a kid, I was like a big fan of the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. I watched all the reruns, and I was a big Will Smith fan.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like now some of his shtick like doesn't work as well for me. Just like when he's like yelling with the alien and stuff like that, like it just does. I don't know, like it just didn't work perfectly well for me this time around. There is an element of like self-seriousness maybe about Will Smith, of like there are some almost Tom Cruise too, where they want to be like perfect kind of, and their characters are not flawed and they're just cool, and I think that doesn't appeal to me as much as like the characters that are a little bit more flawed and like Jeff Goldblum is like a weird quirky guy.
I love Jeff Goldblum,
and like he feels more human because like he feels the despair. He's like, the world is ending, I'm getting drunk, like he fucked up his marriage, or he's divorced, like there's a little bit more humanity to that rather than Will Smith feeling sort of just like a pure hero, his character.
I completely agree with that. I think if I had to pick, like the only one that I actually wrote down a lot about is Jeff Goldblum. Like when I'm looking through my notes, Jeff Goldblum comes up a lot. I even have a note here. Jeff Goldblum's character is just the best. Such an everyman, and I love that he is pro-recycle, anti-smoking, and his dad has no idea what he does for a living. He calls him a cable repairman. I don't know why I wrote that part down, but that's pretty funny.
Well, that's funny. And all the characters do feel like it's another optimistic part of this movie is that all these characters are so different and from all these different backgrounds, and they all come together to work together. Like Will Smith and Jeff Goldblum, their characters, they would never be friends in real life.
Right.
But they come together and they use the best parts of both of them to save the day. And I think that's a very optimistic just vision of humanity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So overall, it's a fun movie.
Yeah. Classic 90s, campy, fun. It's enjoyable. You're watching aliens fight. It's great.
Yeah. It's a very good movie.
What'd you give it? Unless you have anything else to say about it. But
I don't think so. I think we covered our bases. And I gave it 3 stars. I'm kind of feeling a little more 3.5 as we talk about it, because it just feels I feel positively about the movie. Yeah. So I definitely liked it, but I gave it 3 stars.
Yeah. Up until now, I've actually been holding off on reviewing things for the when I know I'm watching it for the podcast, because I wanted to let our discussions guide it a little bit. But for these, I just ended up logging them right away. I figure I don't want to wait to log them and then forget some stuff or what. I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Who cares? Anyways, I gave it 3.5 and I'm sticking with it. I love this movie. It's great. It has some flaws. It's not a perfect movie, but it is a lot of fun. 3.5 stars for me.
3.5. You know what? I'm giving it 3.5 too. I'm changing it. It's a 3.5.
I don't know why, baby.
Yeah. I think some of the way that it treated death in certain things and just sort of the cheesiness of certain parts of it maybe were keeping me from giving it the 3.5. But you know what? It's a good movie, and it's really almost a platonic ideal of this genre.
Yeah.
And it's just a good version, the best version of this.
Yeah.
But even though the genre...
Sorry.
I was going to say, even though the genre has a lot of duds afterwards, this movie inspired a lot of duds. Yeah,
if Moonfall felt like this movie at all, I would maybe have enjoyed it a little bit. But yeah, fuck Moonfall.
Damn. So overall, Roland Emmerich, not one of your favorite directors?
It's funny because I The Day After Tomorrow, I enjoy. It's not a great movie, but I enjoy it. I have I feel like some of these, I think what happened is some of these were The Day After Tomorrow, Independence Day were on as reruns a lot when I was a kid. So I have good memories on some of these, but then pretty much any of his new stuff, it's just so fake and so bad. And I don't know, even 2012, I can kind of enjoy a little bit at times, but I don't know, the more that we lead into him just making everything on a computer screen, the much less I enjoy any of it.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen an interview of him sort of saying how much he appreciates CGI and how he feels less limited by it. So I guess in his process, he enjoys that of not feeling limited, but right. I really do think the practical effects helped his movies a lot.
Yeah.
And they just feel more real, and rather than just a bunch of CGI. But anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going long. This is going to be a long ass episode, I think.
I know.
But that's all right. It's time for Old.
It's time for Old.
Old, it's the beach that makes you old. That's the high concept. 2021 movie directed by M. Night Shyamalan. Filmed during COVID, I believe, in the Dominican Republic. It's based on a Swiss graphic novel called Sandcastle, which I didn't realize it was based on a graphic novel before.
Me neither.
Yeah. But it's written and directed and produced by M. Night Shyamalan. Cinematographer is Mike Goulakis, who did It Follows and Under the Silver Lake, and also Us, and he worked with M. Night on Split and Glass as well. And it has a really good cast. I don't want to go through all the names and everything, but so basically Gael Garcia Bernal and Vicky Krieps are Guy and Priska, and they have 2 kids, Trent and Maddox, and Trent is 6 years old and Maddox is 11 years old, and they're on a vacation, and they get there and everything seems kind of peachy. They're having some marriage issues, but it doesn't seem so bad until the next day M. Night Shyamalan drives them to a beach.
Yeah, literally M. Night drives them.
Yeah, he plays the van driver. Yeah, and basically from there they have to try to figure out what the hell is going on and how to get out, and it just goes from there. That's kind of the plot. We can go through into more details as we go, but what were your overall thoughts on Old?
So, I've seen this movie once before, and I remembered liking it quite a bit. During this rewatch, I wouldn't say I liked it maybe as much as the first time, but I did enjoy this movie. It's fun. I think, unfortunately, it's pretty poorly received in a few ways. Real quick, so the ratings real quick are 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, 53% audience score, 5.8 out of 10 on IMDb, 2.4 out of 5 on Letterboxd, 5.225 average. That's our lowest average now. Ironically, beating out Trap, another M. Night movie, but both of them I think get a bit more flack than they deserve. This one particularly. It's also looking at M. Night movies, just sorting on Letterboxd by rating. This is somehow the bottom of the list goes Airbender, After Earth, The Happening, and then Old. This is his fourth worst rated on Letterboxd movie.
Lower than Lady in the Water?
Lower than Lady in the Water. Lady in the Water has, and then it goes Praying with Anger, Lady in the Water. So Lady in the Water is 6, and this is 4.
Wow. That is surprising to me. This is way better than Lady in the Water.
I don't understand. It's higher than, it's lower than Glass. It's lower than The Visit is fine, but Split. Yeah, I don't fully understand what all the hate is, but anyway, so those are, like, I went into it with, I think, pretty high expectations because I remember liking it quite a bit the first time. I don't think it really met those expectations for me as much this time, but I still enjoyed it a lot, and a lot more, I'd say, than it seems the average.
Yeah, this actually, after this watch, this is my favorite M. Night movie. I think this is his best. I think it's fantastic. I think the whole idea, obviously the idea comes from a graphic novel, but it's just, I think it's brilliant. And I understand, like, the dialogue in some ways feels forced. I think that's the main thing people don't like about it. Maybe they find the characters annoying or something like that, but I just think the cinematography is great, and just the concept is a very poignant, like, exploration of our mortality. And, like, in reality, like, we're all kind of on the beach. There's no way out. Like, there's only one way we're going. And I think that scene on the beach between Guy and Priska at night is, like, one of the best scenes in his whole filmography.
The you're talking about, like, right at the end, pretty much, or pretty close to the end of the beach area, of the beach part. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I agree. I like, for me, this movie, in terms of M. Night, I always feel weird talking about M. Night because I have such high opinion on Signs and The Sixth Sense, even though I haven't rewatched them in a long time. But this is, of my recent watches, I like this more than Trap. I like it more than A Knock at the Cabin.
Yeah, Knock at the Cabin.
Knock at the Cabin. And really anything else that I can think of that I've seen recently from him. The only things that I'm not sure if it really beats out for me is Signs and The Sixth Sense. I think it's hard to beat those in my head right now. But
yeah, that's fair. Honestly, I have to rewatch The Sixth Sense because it's been so long since I've seen it. But I would have said that was my favorite before, but now I'm like, you know what? I'll give it to Old.
Awesome.
But yeah, so basically we just get into some of the plot and just sort of go from there, and we'll talk about our thoughts while we go through the plot summary.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So yeah, basically they go to a beach and they get old. Anyway, that's that.
We're done.
Sorry, I'm going to stop making this joke. I mean,
it's a high concept episode. Yeah.
I can't keep making the same joke. But so Guy is an insurance analyst. So throughout the movie, he's sort of saying, like, oh, there's a 95% chance that you won't die or something. Like, he's that's the way he thinks. And yeah, basically, there is a scene where Guy and Priska are fighting, and clearly they've had a rocky marriage, and the kids hear it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on, like, Trent or that character Idlib, the other little kid that is, like, at the hotel? Like, do you have any thought? Maybe we'll just talk about the hotel sequence before they get to the beach. This is introducing us to all the characters and all that.
I put some notes down that, like, there was some clues here about what's going on. What is her name?
Are you talking about their kid Maddox?
No.
Or the lady who gives them the drinks at the very beginning? Or the lady who is a therapist and has...
Yes, the seizure.
Patricia.
Patricia. Yes, Patricia. Ooh, seizure lady. Probably not the best one to call her, but yes, the therapist is a better name. Yes, Patricia has a seizure in this hotel scene, and we know that something health related is going on with Priska pretty early on during this whole hotel scene. Yep. I don't know if we're actually told that it's cancer yet.
No, she says she has a tumor, but it's benign. Like right now.
Right. So we know there's something health related going on with her. And so as we're introduced to some of the characters, there's some clues that like at least a lot of the people here seem to be on like health vacations, you know, like maybe they're in bad health or whatever, and they just want to do something now, right?
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And also I just like the cinematography during these early scenes, I would say is fine, but really like on the beach, we get some really cool shots. I think the hotel sequence in the beginning, I didn't feel much for. I don't know about you, but
yeah, it's really just setting things up. I think they move through it pretty quick. We don't linger longer than we need. I think it just gets us to know the characters and their dynamics, and it's pretty effective in doing that. You know, we meet Patricia's husband is Jaron, and he's a nurse. And there's also a family with Charles, who's a doctor, and he has a wife and a kid and his mom, and they also have a dog. And that all comes into play later, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, so basically they are told, well, when they get there, I guess we can talk about it with spoilers. So at the beginning, they're given a drink, which is actually the medicine that they're testing.
Right.
And then they go to the beach, and Midsize Sedan is on the beach, which also amazing name. Incredible. That there's a rapper on the beach and his name is Midsize Sedan, played by Aaron Pierre, who's in Rebel Ridge this year, and he's a really good actor. He's also British, which you would never have suspected from this movie. Yeah. Or from Rebel Ridge. He plays very convincing American.
It's also so when they're all dropped off at the beach, M. Night, this is like, it's funny, in I think every one of his movies he has a cameo, right? But in this, he's more than just a cameo. We learn even more later on, but he's dropping them off and he tells them that he's not allowed to go into the beach with them. And he gives them a bunch of food and they're like, why do we need all this food? And he's like, oh, the kids will be hungry or something, right? And there's all this like ominous, like kind of foreshadowing. And then as they're walking to the beach, there's this one shot this is later on, sorry. There's a shot when they're walking through a tunnel. I thought that was earlier, but that tunnel, of course, there's some cool shots as people walk through that tunnel of like time slowing down as they're walking. And we learn more about that tunnel being like this kind of transitionary place, I guess, where once they're in the place where they're aging fast, the beach, leaving the beach, like trying to get back to a place where they're aging normal, like their bodies reject that, I guess they were saying, so they pass out.
Yeah, they almost explain it like if you're underwater and you come up too fast, then you pass out, I guess.
Yeah, kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think there are all these sort of rules and stuff in the movie that probably people don't like because they're like, that doesn't make any sense, but it's within the context of a fictional movie, and they explain it, I think, well enough that I'm willing to go along with it and just go along for the ride. Because ultimately, like, the details of it, you need to explain enough so that the audience isn't just completely confused and annoyed. But I don't need, I don't need it to be completely realistic.
Yeah, I agree. I think in the same way that we were talking with Independence Day, like, there's some stuff that you just have to be like, all right, I'm here for the movie, Yeah.
Yes.
And I think that's the same here.
Yeah.
And I think until the end, they really don't try to like over-explain the science of anything. And I appreciate that. I think whenever movies do that, I kind of get really annoyed. I think it's just like stupid, and it kind of like, it's like, do you guys really think that that your whole audience is dumb enough to think that all the stupid science nonsense that you're saying is true, right? But
yeah.
Anyways.
Also, I did want to say one thing about before they get to the beach.
Yeah.
Idlib is like a little kid, and his uncle owns the resort, I guess, or manages the resort. And he gives Trent a code, and it says like ice cream eating contest tomorrow. And then that comes into play because he gave him a code that ends up helping them at the end of the movie. But I think that is a good setup, and just showing the way kids are sort of naturally empathetic, in some ways.
Yeah. That's interesting. I actually forgot that he gave him that code.
Yeah, so it doesn't come in. The one at the end isn't random. It's
right.
set up.
Which makes much more sense, because I actually did forget about that. When it came up at the end, I was like, okay, I guess they just know the code, but there it is.
Yep, there it is. So, yeah, they get to the beach and they start aging. They can't leave. Basically, is the first thing that happens the dog dies?
The dog dies. They find the body of mid-sized Sedan's girlfriend that he went with, and she's like clearly been. It looks like she's been dead for a bit, and he's like, she just went missing or something. Like she just wandered off, and I think that's kind of our first small clue.
Yeah, she just tried to swim out and then never came back. Obviously, we can assume she went past the barrier and passed out and drowned, I guess. But yeah, her body like floats up next to Trent.
Yeah.
And then they start doing that. Charles thinks Midsize Sedan killed her. Yeah. So he's very suspicious of him.
He seems pretty racist.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if that was what they were going for.
I don't either, but he was very hostile, like right away.
Yeah, because he has like a mental he's schizophrenia, I guess. Say at the end of the movie. So I don't know if that is coming into play of him being so suspicious of him, but also like it's a guy with a bloody nose and then a dead lady shows up. Like, I get why he's suspicious, I guess.
Definitely.
But then obviously his schizophrenia starts getting worse as time goes on, and he ends up killing Midsize Sedan. That's if you're here, you've seen the movie.
Yeah, pretty gruesome. Continuous stabbing. Like that was.
And Charles is just a problem. They needed to get that knife away from him way faster.
Yeah, that's true. And also, so in this early part though, when we see the girlfriend body, we also get the clue because Trent or I think it's just Trent maybe that says this at first, but says that the swimsuit starts hurting him, and the mom I think it must have been the mom was like, oh, you might have just eaten too much or something, right? And it turns out he might just be growing a lot, and we don't know that yet. There's also a really cool shot that I want to point out really early on the beach when the kids are playing freeze tag, and so when they tag each other, they have to freeze, and then they run around, and then the other ones have to run around and try to tag each other or something. And there was some really cool cinematography there, and also the messaging of like time freezing and how we react to time moving was interesting there, and clearly I don't really know if it counts as foreshadowing because the movie's about that, I guess, but definitely some symbolism there. Yeah,
definitely. That is a shot that stands out, definitely that sequence. Because at first when he's frozen, I was like, what's going on? And then it's like, oh, they're playing freeze tag. That makes sense.
Right.
But him frozen is a very sort of striking image. I guess seeing the kid just like frozen there.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that happens. Eventually the dog dies, and then they're talking about the dead body. The dog dies, and then Charles's mom dies. Just her heart just stops. She dies from old age, I guess.
Yeah.
And then I think after that the kids grow, and there are new actors playing Trent and Maddox.
Yes, and there's a few shots leading up to that when they're talking to Jaren and Patricia, who just recently got dropped. I think they get dropped off later, right?
Yes, they did. They were late because she had the seizure, I think.
Right, and that's when people figure out they can't actually leave because they're like, oh, we should try to get back up to M. Night, the driver, to get out, and then they start passing out when they leave.
Yes.
But there's some shots leading up to the kids' reveal of being older actors now where you hear them talking to, and Jaren, and I think it might just be Jaren that's talking to them, is like, oh, how old are you? And they're like, oh, 6 or whatever, right? No, really, how old are you, right? And then, but it never actually shows you the actors yet, and it takes a little while, and it's a lot of shots like over their shoulders and like around them and stuff. But then it's not until the mom comes over and sees them that you actually see the characters. And I thought that was a really cool, like playing with the camera and building up your expectations that like something's different, but you don't get to see it yet. Yeah,
they do a very good job of drawing the tension out there. And with Jared and Patricia just being like, these kids are messing with us, like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But also, once they do start playing with new characters, there are several scenes where I think Alex Wolff is very effective at playing like he's mentally younger than he is physically. Like there are times where he freaks out and like has these big emotional moments that do feel more like in line with a younger kid. So I think he does really good. We'll get toward the end of the movie, but at the end, once night passes and morning comes, and they're played by old actors, like in their 40s or 50s, the characters are. I do think that actor was less effective. Like he just felt like his age.
Yeah.
He didn't feel like a kid that was in an old person's body.
Right. I would agree.
But I think Alex Wolff was very good at presenting that.
Yeah. And they mentioned that like time is 30 minutes there is a year. So by the time the night has gone over, they've aged like 40 years or something.
I mean, if it was like 8, they've been there basically 24 hours, so that's 48 years. So they've been in their 50s.
It's crazy.
Yeah, totally insane.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's just a terrifying idea, and overnight there are very terrifying scenes.
Yeah,
particularly with Charles and his wife Crystal. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah, and we realize that mid-sized sedan gets. I think Charles swipes at him with a knife or slashes at him, and he gets a scar on his face. And we realize that it heals really quickly, and that's like kind of another indication that there's clearly time stuff. I think we've already seen the kids at this point, but I guess just exploring more of what that encompasses.
Yeah, exploring the effects of it, and then shortly after, the tumor in his side is growing like massive, so they have to like perform surgery and pull it out basically, and they cut her open at first, and then it just seals right back up. So they sort of have to hold her skin apart with their hands, and it's a very disturbing scene. And I think these sequences are very effective just as a horror movie. Yeah,
and it's clear how fast the thing is growing, because like when they first feel it, he says it's grown to the size of like a golf ball already, and then by the time they're pulling it out, it's already like the size of a cantaloupe or something. Like it's huge.
Yeah.
And so that was like really accelerated, and like a pretty grotesque part to watch.
Yeah, definitely. And then I don't know if I'm skipping over anything, but also at one point we learned that mid-sized sedan has like a blood clotting issue, and that's why his nose keeps bleeding. And that's why he's there. Obviously, everyone is there for the tests.
Yeah,
but we don't know that yet. When you're
other than the kids, like just fuck the kids, I guess.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's completely insane.
Yeah,
but we'll get into the moral quandary at the end. But yeah, eventually, Kara and Trent are, they've gone through puberty. They're sort of late teenage years, and they're in a tent, and Kara gets pregnant.
Yeah,
and given the 30 minutes is a year, basically like 10 minutes pass, and she's already got a big belly, and the baby's coming, and basically she gives birth on the beach, and then the baby dies almost immediately afterwards.
Yeah,
and it's a very chaotic scene. Like her mom Crystal is being crazy, and there's just a lot going on in that scene. And I think the movie is very effective at, it's just like one thing after another on the beach. Like there's always a crisis of a new thing that you're learning the effects of the beach on the people, and there's always a next thing going. And I think the pacing is very it's kind of relentless, of just it keeps going, and it makes sense. Like time is passing so fast that there is such a pressure to try to escape, and they don't have time to sit around or anything.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it does a good job at making you feel that time is passing quickly by just throwing things at you. I think the pregnancy thing is like literally right after they take the tumor out of Priska, right?
Yeah. I think maybe, does Priska even... Yeah,
I don't think she's awake.
I don't know if she's awake.
I forget, but like I think that because Charles is still going on about that movie. I mean, he goes on about that for a while, but he's like, they're realizing that like his kid is pregnant, and he's like, seriously, who knows the name of this goddamn movie or something? And, so I think it's like right away from there. It seemed like also during this part, like it seemed like leading up to him stabbing Charles to death, before they revealed the schizophrenia thing, like I just thought he was like getting early onset dementia like really quickly, because he seemed to like really be just losing like memory and losing touch with like what is happening in the moment.
Yeah,
which I guess like analogs with schizophrenia as well. But like my assumption for a while in the movie was that it was like dementia kicking in.
Yeah, that's what I thought at first, was that it was dementia. But also a little detail, he's talking about a movie with Marlon Brando and Jack Nicholson, and he's like, can't remember the name. And the movie is The Missouri Breaks. That's the movie he's thinking of. It's a 1976 Western with both of them in it. And apparently that's what he's trying to think of. So just so people, I don't know.
That's funny.
Kind of a fun little. At
one point, he says,
never figure it out.
Yeah, and I think at the when he first brings it up, he says, "This reminds me of that movie."
Yeah,
I don't know what he must be reminded of. I haven't seen that movie, but if it's a Western,
I haven't seen it either.
I don't know what analogs there are there, but
yeah, with like tumors or
yeah.
Or maybe the situation, maybe the movie's kind of about, I'm not sure. It's directed by Arthur Penn. And I don't know. We'll have to watch the movie to actually
find out. Yeah.
Anyway, I can't do research live on the thing and
that's right.
Try to do the podcast. But yeah, so that happens. And then pretty quickly after, Charles kills Midsize Sedan.
Yeah.
Like, that happens pretty quick. Yeah, a lot of stabbing. I guess they don't heal quick enough.
Yeah, that's right.
I guess that's what happens. So yeah, and then after that, you see a shot of like someone watching from a distance.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think a couple times you had seen like a flash from over there, or like some like reflection of a lens or something, right?
Yeah,
which gets pointed out later, but you see it a couple times during the movie.
Yeah.
I probably only if you're looking for it, I guess, but yeah. And then Jaren tries to swim around the thing, and he ends up dying. Yeah.
So I guess that's all there really is to that. I like the Jaren character. He seems like a good guy, and he's played by Ken Lung, and it's a good character that I liked. So
yeah,
didn't like to see him go out like that.
I know, and he seemed very grounded the whole time, and he felt like a very real character.
Yeah, and he kind of just felt like a good guy. Like he's a nurse. He's taking care of his wife with her health issues, and he kind of just don't like to see him go out like that.
Yeah,
or Jaren.
And then so once Jaren's gone too, I mean, eventually, I think pretty quickly after Maddox finds his body, but pretty soon after, like we just start seeing a lot of effects really quickly. Priska loses some hearing. Guy is like seeing stuff a little fuzzy. It's clear they're getting like really old, right? Crystal is running around like saying like don't look at me, and clearly has like self-image issues of aging, right?
And she has bone issues.
Yeah, and you can actually start to see them at this time too, I think.
She almost looks like a skeleton, like starting to look like that.
Yeah, I actually wrote down that it gave me some Substance vibes of when like I forget the exact parts, but like at times in the Substance when you see like the big, like the hunched spine,
Yeah, definitely. I get that.
That movie is just so memorable.
Yeah, that movie's awesome. I definitely see the connections.
Yeah.
And also, Kara tries to climb the cliff.
Yeah.
Which is sort of like their last ditch effort. She gets very high up and then passes out and splats on the ground. And that's a scene where, Alex Wolff is freaking out, Trent, and yeah, it's just crazy throughout of just constantly one thing after another. And pretty much right after that, Patricia has like a bunch of seizures back to back to back, and she ends up dying from that.
Yeah.
But she hadn't been having any seizures, they explain later, because they gave her the drinks at the beginning are the medicine, and in theory it worked because she lasted like the equivalent of 16 years without any seizures. Yeah. So, but then obviously it wears off, and then she dies, and then we see. I really love the shots of Guy's vision and the out of focus shots, and it really just, I don't know, it was just simple but very effective of just showing us the effects of him aging, and just the realities of that, I guess.
I thought so too. I really liked those a lot. And I thought also just like in terms of on a similar aspect, like when she loses half her hearing, I thought they did that really well in the audio. And just in general, like the shots, like all around are just like the cinematography in this movie really is pretty gorgeous a lot of the time. Anyways, but yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. And yeah, and then basically it becomes night, and the last people are Charles, Crystal, and then the main family. I think everyone else is dead by nightfall.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, Priska and Guy have that very emotional scene on the beach, which is really sort of the thematic, like the thesis of the movie, of just, loving the people that are around you and making the most of our time, really. And all it is very poignant of just all the issues that they've had in their relationship, and how at the end of the day, like none of that really matters. And, they still just love each other and care about each other, and all those little petty things just kind of wash away, and it doesn't matter at the end of the day,
Yeah, and Patricia says a similar thing, I think, like right before her seizure. She talks about a sister that she hasn't talked to in a while, and that whatever their fight, that she used to be older, and now her sister used to be older, and now she's older than her, but that their fight seems so meaningless now. And then yeah, like a lot of, I mean, that messaging is very clear, this whole movie, of like, value the people that are around you, right? Time is really fucking weird.
Yeah.
I guess, anyways, let's finish off the plot and then jump into some of that more, a little bit more. But
yeah, but basically they both die at the beach. You can see them aging, and the effects are very like effective, like just the makeup or any effects that they did.
Yeah.
And then pretty much like night passes, and Trent and Maddox are just like, well, no. There's two huge, very scary scenes, because Charles tries to attack. This is actually before the emotional scene, because he tries to attack Guy and Priska, and then I believe Priska ends up killing him.
Yeah.
Right? How do they kill him? I kind of forget.
I don't remember either, but
they end up killing him just in self-defense. But his like skin, his face looks all messed up and stuff like that. He's just having a schizophrenic delusions, and he tries to attack Guy, and then Priska sort of defends him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of forgetting exactly how they kill him in the end.
Yeah, I don't remember either, actually, but
then there's also the scene of Crystal in that little cove. This, I believe, is, I don't remember the exact order of everything, but Trent and Maddox are like in this little cove thing, and then she's like, it's just very disturbing. She has a bone calcium deficiency or something like that, so her bones are like glass. She's Mrs. Glass, basically, and her bones are just breaking, and she's like in this completely distorted thing. It is very body horror. A scene.
Yeah, gross.
Yeah, I guess that's it. I don't know if you have anything else to say about that, but I thought those were two of the scariest and most effective like horror movie scenes in the movie.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The movie definitely, like, as the time goes on and as we get towards the end, the horror of it all is definitely accelerating with, at first, obviously, Charles kills Midsize Sedan in a pretty grotesque way, but then we get that like one-upped as more and more kind of horrific and grotesque stuff starts happening with particularly like that family. But
so the way Charles dies is Priska has one of those rusty knives from like the previous people on the beach, and she stabs and says like rust is basically like poison, which I don't know if that makes any sense at all, but I think he gets tetanus. Yes, he basically gets tetanus all over, and that's why his face like turns like that, and then he dies because it's rapidly spreading through his body, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. Yeah, and that happens like so quick. She stabs him with it and explains it, and he just like very quickly that transition happens where he dies. Yeah. Oof.
Yeah, pretty brutal death, but also the guy was kind of he wasn't very likable.
That's
the way it goes. I guess they had to have that family, that sort of more unlikable family. Here, just for for the conflict of it all. Can't just have everyone being like Jaren and Patricia, just kind of nice people. Even though Patricia, she's like she's kind of like, all right, let's talk about our feelings, and it's like, lady, we are in the time it takes me to talk about my feelings. I just aged like 6 months or whatever. Like,
yeah, and then we're just left. Now we're just left with the two, Maddox and what's the kid's name? Trent.
Trent and Maddox, and they're old. Trent realizes that, oh my god, he had a code from Idlib, and he goes and it says, my uncle doesn't like the coral or something like that.
Yeah, well, and they found a journal, and this is kind of the part where they actually do a little bit of bullshit science explanation, because they find a journal for some reason that actually just explains everything.
Yeah, pretty much. It has like all the names and dates and addresses of people that were here previously.
Yeah.
I guess this is trial 73, we find out. So in one of the previous trials, they had everyone writing down their personal information, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, it wasn't clear to me, because also like in that journal, they also read off like this like scientific explanation for what's happening, and that metal can help like protect you from it or whatever. And it wasn't clear to me, like this journal seemed like it was from one of the scientists or something. So it wasn't clear why it was here. But
I assumed it was from a previous trial participant who had figured this out somehow.
Yeah, it could have been.
It's kind of just a magical journal that just pops up. It's unexplained. We never find out how they did that.
Right. But from it, they learned that they can, well, from that and the message, they learned that they can go through the coral, essentially, right? That's the idea.
Yeah.
And
the coral protects them or whatever, so they have to swim through there.
Yeah. And then they start getting through it, and then it cuts, and you don't get to see. She gets trapped. Maddox gets her like sleeve trapped.
That was my least favorite part of the movie. Take off your stupid shawl, whatever that thing is. Like, what are you doing, lady? That was a frustrating part of the movie. And just the way it's edited, like it feels like they're underwater for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't feel like they're really rushing.
Yeah, don't try to hold your breath during that underwater scene, you know?
Yeah, do not do that. It definitely feels like they should have drowned.
Yeah. And it cuts without us actually knowing if they do or not. And we get the scenes from M. Night. It turns out M. Night has been watching all along. Yeah. And reports back to the office and is like, they're all gone. And it's funny, M. Night is kind of a villain. Yeah,
definitely. Well, he's watching with a camera, and just like the movie itself, like it's a very meta moment of
that's right.
He's the director who's putting these characters through the situation, and he's watching with his camera from a distance. And I don't know, like this is almost like putting into text how M. Night is like a mischievous little guy who likes to make his characters do all this fucked up shit.
Yeah, that's right.
He just likes to watch all this fucked up stuff happen on the beach. Like it's kind of a fun meta moment. I think this is one of his cameos that works the best.
Yeah, and in a way, this is like, I mean, it is still a cameo, but it's much less of a cameo because he is actually like a character, right? Like he's a role in this movie.
Yeah. Usually he'll have like a role with like a line or two.
Yeah, but in this, he's like,
it's not quite like Hitchcock, just like walking in the background, you know?
Right. But in this one, he's like, it's interesting because he's actually like at least a minor villain in this movie.
Yeah. And so we go back to the lab, and there's a memorial plaque, and one of the names on it is Mike Goulakis, the cinematographer.
That was funny.
You notice that?
Yeah, the very top name, and it's really the only one that I made out. I didn't like pause it or anything, but you see it right away. You don't even have to pause it to notice that one.
Yep.
That was fun.
So he likes his little Easter eggs and cameos and just little stuff like that. Like just having fun with these type of movies. I think he is a very Hitchcockian director. And that seems like his big influence.
And then they explained to us in the lab that they learned a lot from this trial. They say like some of these trials don't always go well. Yeah, this is trial 73, and we learned a lot from it because Patricia didn't have a seizure for the equivalent of like 6 years or whatever it was.
16, I think.
16. Yeah, you're probably right. And that everyone else died for a good cause. That's what they said. They're like, yeah, everyone died and we made progress. We can expedite the the seizure medicine process to get to human trials and whatnot. And this really weird, like, this is when you kind of get posed with this really tough ethical dilemma of like what's actually happening, right?
Yeah, it's sort of a utilitarian versus like Kantian moral thing of like, is putting these people through such torture and most horrific experience you could ever imagine worth saving more lives? Like in pure numbers, it might save more people than this small group, but I would still say that it is wrong.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. I mean, you have this whole crew of scientists that are all going along with it, and clearly people know that what they're doing is at least generally accepted as wrong, because they're not going through like normal, processes, obviously, because it wouldn't be accepted, right? But yeah, I mean, they clearly are getting some value out of it, right?
Yeah, and I wonder, like, I guess a more nefarious way of looking at it is that they test this medicine, and then they're ahead of everyone else. They can make a bunch of money off of it.
True.
But maybe also they do think that they're doing the right thing. Like maybe, but I feel like in order to do this, you have to be a cruel, uncaring person just to put people through that and watch it. Yeah.
I mean, I wonder if some of them can distance themselves from all of that and just say, I'm preparing a medicine that people will do a trial on, and it's not the most ethical trial, but I'm going to put that to the side and hope that it ends up helping a bunch of people, right? And
yeah,
that's probably like how a lot of them might be feeling, but
definitely.
Also, that's fucked.
yeah, definitely. It's almost like they're like a Nazi who like just like does accounting or something like that. And he's like, well, I'm not killing anyone. I mean, it's a good job, Yeah. But at the end of the day, he's helping horrible cause, And I do think there is like a reality to this in science of these cruel trials just throughout history, and it still happens.
Yeah.
Of testing on animals and just testing in very unethical ways,
even on people.
Even, or like the I forget, it's not Birmingham, but it's somewhere in, I think, Mississippi or Alabama. They did like, the government did a test for like a syphilis. Man, I forget the details of it.
In a prison, right? Is that what you're?
I don't think
on a town.
No,
on a town.
Literally on a town. It was just like a poor black area, and they basically gave a bunch of people syphilis in this like test.
Yeah,
it's like just very fucked up. But
yeah,
I think that is a reality.
And thinking of like the mental illness stuff that's going on here, and just like the illnesses in general, like this is also a big thing from like asylums back in the day, and before people really cared about trying to learn and help people that were suffering from mental illnesses. It was largely just like experimenting on them, right? And trying to figure out like ways to help them, but through like terrific experiments like lobotomies and things like that, and literal electroshock stuff, right? Like torturous stuff, right? Yeah. So
all in the name of science or mental health or whatever. And but also it was the Tuskegee syphilis study. So it was in Tuskegee, Alabama, and I guess it happened in the 30s, but technically the study went throughout those whole people's lives, and they didn't even know that they were like test subjects, really. Like they didn't fully understand what was happening, and apparently over 100 people died as a result of the experiment. So it's really, that is a reality of people just being so cruel and uncaring about, just in the name of whatever their goal is, like science or research or whatever. And it's still done today, unfortunately. Like I think a particular place where you can find like reports of this is like even as back as like some of the declassified CIA stuff is like in prisons, right? Like you get people to sign up for it and they'll agree to it, and it's in the name of science or medicine or whatever it is, right? And it's terrible. Yeah. Well, Jesus, this episode? We had such fun movies, but we talked about how the presidents are garbage now, and how racism and death, and I mean, shit, what a downer of an episode. Not really. It was pretty fun. It was two really good movies, and yeah, I'm glad that you liked Old.
Yeah, I think it definitely gives you a lot of stuff to think about. Also, just the fact that it's made during COVID also like gives you that stuff to think about of like COVID really messed up timing, right? Like for people, like you ended up being inside for a lot of time, but like time both simultaneously stopped because you weren't doing things, but it also seemed to like fly by. Like when you think of the like past, maybe not so much anymore, but like last year, thinking of like the past 3 years when COVID was really a big force of nature, right? Like it felt like nothing had really happened over those 3 years.
Yeah.
And yet it went by so quick somehow, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that's a thing that was, I don't know if that was intentional or not at the time, but it's definitely a byproduct of this coming out from that time.
Yeah, definitely. That even if just subconsciously, that is something that connects with people in the movie and in real life. Definitely.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I don't know if I have that much else to say about Old. I think it's very poignant and a beautiful movie, honestly. And also it's terrifying and a good genre picture. So it works on like a metaphorical level, but also it's just a thrilling, like fun experience to watch, I think.
Yeah, it's got a little bit for like everyone. Like it's got that body horror in there. It's got some like some other types of horror in here and some like philosophical and ethical questions and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I enjoyed it quite a bit. I gave it 3.5 stars. I think originally I had it at 4 stars. And I think I could definitely see myself having gone there again, but I did land on 3.5 this time.
That's fair. I gave it 4 stars for me.
Excellent.
Yeah. So overall, Old is a great movie. IndeOLDence Day. Two solid movies.
It does surprise me so much that this one that Old is so particularly poorly received. And I'm really curious to hear what other people think about Old. If you've seen it, which hopefully if you're watching this part, you've seen it. Shoot us an email or hit us up on one of our social medias. We'll go over those in just a second and let us know your thoughts on either of these two movies, but especially Old. Are you in the camp of this being one of M. Night's worst, one of his best? Do you not really care for M. Night, but you know the movie? What do you think?
Yeah, I'm definitely curious. I think this movie is definitely underrated. So if people have any thoughts on it, positive or negative, hey, if you hated the movie, you can let us know.
Yeah.
But also, just do you have any thoughts on where high concept movies are sort of culturally now? I feel like high concept movies were a big thing in like the 80s and 90s, maybe almost maybe like Die Hard or Speed. Like those are kind of high concept in certain ways, and I feel like these type of movies don't get made as often now.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I think it's hard because like the definition of high concept is so hard to really lock in on. Like we had a hard time a couple of weeks ago when we were trying to actually decide on what it meant to be a high concept movie. And I think like you can make an argument that, for example, like Heretic is a high concept movie, right? Going back to something that we both saw recently of like, it's 2 Mormons in a house that can't escape. Or like, whatever. Not Mormon missionaries. Trapped in a house they can't escape. And I think there's an argument though that like trying to high conceptify some movies also just like, what's the word? Not devalues them, but strips them of a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, it oversimplifies it. Maybe
that's the word. Yeah. So I don't know, because I think like a lot of movies today, if you wanted to oversimplify them and call them high concept, you could, but they're definitely not as high concept as something like Independence Day or Speed, right? Like those are just classic. What they are is what you say, right? When you high conceptify them or whatever you want to say. But.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it is a very wishy-washy definition, which is why we had at the end of the last episode, we were struggling to understand what counts as high concept and what doesn't.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Do you think similar on that in terms of?
Yeah, I think it is a very wishy-washy definition, so it's hard to quantify, obviously. But I do feel like maybe in the 80s and 90s, having a high concept pitch for a movie was a way to get an audience into it, and to get maybe just some like Die Hard. When Die Hard came out, no one knew what it was, or Speed or whatever. So it was just a way to get the audience in on the concept. But now I feel like studios just want to make things with IP. So this is based on a book. This is based on a comic book. It's a character, it's a sequel. So that is the elevator pitch for the audience. So they don't necessarily need a high concept like way to sell the audience on watching a movie, because it's just like, it's the new Alien movie, it's the new Marvel movie, or whatever. And I feel like studios are just very focused on that. And then maybe like, I don't know, they're like studios like A24, they don't really make high concept movies. But they've become very successful of just word of mouth on the internet, and having good trailers and good marketing, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's another part with movies being so much more accessible right now. Like, you don't have to go out and buy a movie. You don't have to go out and go to the movie store and rent one. You can stream it online pretty much anywhere. So it's much easier for people to not know a lot about a movie, or not need a high concept pitch to decide on a movie. Whereas back in the day, if you were going to go to the movie store, you wanted to know what movie you wanted, or wanted to be able to easily figure it out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And like trailers now on the internet, you can just watch, like they're so much more accessible. You don't just see them at the beginning, like randomly on TV, or just at the beginning or end of a movie. Like marketing for things on social media and everything is just so much easier that, I don't know, it's just more accessible. So you don't necessarily need a way for some random guy to be like, hey, you want to watch this new movie? The bus can't go under 50 miles an hour, otherwise it explodes. It's like, that's a good idea. I like that. That sounds cool. But you don't necessarily need that, because more information about the movie is so much more accessible.
Yeah. And something that kind of is along this line is something that really surprised me, and I swear this connects, but is Nick Cage's second most viewed movie of all time. Could you guess what it is?
Well, because of the concept, I'm going to say Face Off.
No.
Oh.
That's
high concept.
That is a high concept movie. But you're very far off.
I'm far off. His second biggest movie. I don't know.
It's Longlegs.
Oh, okay. So is that based on like
views on Letterboxd views, I should say?
Okay.
That's where I was looking. So obviously there's a lot of bias in that data.
Recency bias, yeah.
Yeah, but it was by like a pretty decent margin, and I'm very surprised because Longlegs, the advertising, to me, the advertising felt very like Hereditary, where it doesn't tell you like anything. Yeah. And you have to go into it blind. And that pays off really well sometimes. But it also is surprising that like movies like that are like the opposite in a way of high concept. Like, these are movies that tell you nothing. Like, you have no idea. And it's so great to me that like stuff like that gets so much attention today, because it also means that things that are more like experimental and things like that get shown off and become widely popular, which is cool.
Yeah, totally agree. It's a good point. And that movie and a lot of other stuff like that is sort of marketed on tone almost.
Yeah.
And stuff like that, and just word of mouth and getting people curious about it because of the mystery.
Right. Yeah.
So it is kind of the opposite of a high concept movie. But
we're running pretty late.
We're running very long. We got to do the genre generator.
There it is.
I guess that's what we're calling it. We still haven't come up with a better name. It's just a cup full of papers. I'm going to randomly take from it. I guess I'll do it on camera so I'm not.
Yeah.
All right.
Here we go.
I guess
drum roll.
One. Ooh.
What'd you get?
Psychological thrillers.
Ooh, psychological thrillers. These are awesome. All right.
Yeah, that's a cool genre. Also, a little bit, potentially some gray area there.
Yeah.
What is or is not a psychological thriller. I don't know about you, but the first psychological thriller, maybe the first two I think of, would be Silence of the Lambs and Seven.
I was literally going to say Seven is my first, if I was just going to jump to one, and Silence of the Lambs is also a really good one. So,
because those are both almost, they toe the line into horror, but not quite, and you're following really the investigation aspect of it,
which separates them quite a bit from things that are like more in the horror realm. Like something like The Shining is definitely a psychological thriller, but it's also a lot of that is more of a horror movie than much else.
I don't think of The Shining as a psychological thriller. It's maybe psychological horror, but
yeah, that's true.
I don't necessarily think of it as a thriller.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I guess maybe because it's so abstract and in their heads and stuff like that. Like,
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Thriller is such a weird genre too, of what counts and what doesn't.
I think one of the interesting things about this whole genre generator thing is it shows us quite a bit how fluid genres are, right? Like, in reality, these are all just terms we all make up to define, to put things into categories, right? But yeah, how rigid can they really be?
Yeah,
unless you're making a movie specifically to be in a genre, but
yeah, you know. True. I'm thinking like there is so many borderline movies. So I'm on Letterboxd now, looking at movies that are categorized as thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like Rear Window is in there, Good Time is in there, Chinatown. I'm like, I don't think of these necessarily as psychological thrillers.
Yeah.
Or even necessarily thrillers.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I've said thriller so many times, I feel like.
What about Trap? Would you consider Trap a psychological thriller?
I think that's cool. Yeah, I think that's a lot more of a psychological thriller.
I would agree.
That would count. Definitely closer than Chinatown.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I guess we're coming down to it. Seven is an option. Nightcrawler is an option. Perfect Blue.
Something like Memento, right? That's a psychological thriller.
Sure. Yeah, that would count. I did like The Invisible Man quite a bit.
Yeah, the movie's pretty awesome.
I don't know. I'm torn. Now I feel like this is not good podcast content of me just trying to figure out which one to pick. Maybe
I know we gotta also lock in, I guess.
Well, we'll lock in. But if people are watching, if you have your favorite psychological thriller, comment down below what you would have picked.
Yes, of course.
Just get us some interaction. What even is a psychological thriller?
Yeah. Shoot us a video. Shoot us an email. That's a whole essay about it if you want to.
Might as well. Honestly, we'll read it on the podcast if you send us an email. We'll have to start including that. Maybe we'll do emails at the end of the show if people start sending them in.
That'd be great.
Maybe is Green Room a psychological thriller?
Yeah.
Or is it just a thriller?
Oh, I don't know. See, I think so.
Oh man. So I think Silence of the Lambs. Well, Silence of the Lambs and Seven feel like they make sense together, but Perfect Blue is a little bit like more of a different path.
That's a fair point.
I think maybe Perfect Blue might be. I feel like Seven and Silence of the Lambs are too similar.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, have you seen Perfect Blue?
I have not. That would be a new one for me.
All right. Well, maybe we'll do Perfect Blue then.
Have you seen Saltburn?
I have.
I actually haven't yet, and I've been meaning to. And this is a psychological thriller. Yeah.
Yes. I would say that counts.
I'm trying to think like movies that I haven't seen as much, right? Because when we did A Girl Walks Home Alone at Night, I think that was a great. Neither one of us has seen it, and that was great. I think in the honor of trying to pick more movies that I have not yet seen, I am going to pick Saltburn.
All right. In honor of that, should I pick Perfect Blue?
You can pick whatever you'd like.
Jeez. Well, the thing is, psychological. I do feel like Perfect Blue is more about a person's psychology.
Okay.
Like, Silence of the Lambs really feels like a thriller, and there is psychological aspects to it. It definitely would count, but I feel like Perfect Blue is almost and maybe it would be cool to see an animated version of a psychological thriller.
True. And I don't think we've done any animation yet.
Oh yeah.
So
good point. Let's do Perfect. All right, we're doing Saltburn and Perfect Blue.
Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn.
Salt Blue? Perfect Burn.
Salt Burn. All right, Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn.
I think Perfect Burn is perfect. Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn.
Salt Blue.
Salt Bloom. The salt is blue.
Salt. All right, Perfect Burn. It sounds wrong. Perfect Burn.
Perfect Burn. It sounds
like
like
a disease.
Yeah, well,
This is our longest episode by far that we've ever done.
it is. That's
all right. Is there anything else we have to talk about? Also, this is our first Zoom full episode.
Right.
So we're trying out the Zoom for full episode. Hopefully the audio is good, and I think it went well.
Yeah, although we love to hear feedback, so please, tell us your thoughts wherever you can. Speaking of,
check us out on Instagram, Mind Your Movies Podcast, Letterboxd, Mind Your Movies. Obviously, we're on YouTube and wherever you find podcasts, Apple, Amazon, Spotify. And yes, shoot us an email, mindyourmoviespodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah.
If you want us to read an email on the show.
Yeah, it could be a review for a movie. It could be one that we've done or a suggestion for a movie to do for one of our half episodes. Really, whatever you want. We are happy to hear from people. So,
yeah, absolutely. I guess that's that. IndeOLDence Day is in the books.
IndeOLDence Day is
join us next week for episode 5.5. We'll be talking about Idiocracy, which is relevant to the election, we believe. Yes. So that's kind of why we went for Idiocracy. And episode 6, we'll be doing Perfect Burn.
That's right. So we got a lot of good stuff coming up.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Peace out,
See you later, everyone.